Welcome to Razzball Radio for Wednesday, July 16th. I am your host, Nick Capozzi. We are here on the Fantasy Sports Network and, of course, on Cablevision in New York. Now, usually on Wednesdays, we got Gray joining us, but today he is off for the All-Star break. I don't know why he gets the All-Star break off, Guru, but I am joined, of course, by the Guru. That's right. You can follow him on Twitter at @TheGuruGS. Now, my man, we usually jam or cram when you come on, but today we're going to take it a little bit different way. We're just going to talk some general news, maybe some second half buys, what we can expect from certain players in the second half. But real quick, I don't know if you realize this, the All-Star Game actually happened yesterday. I don't know if it's still relevant. We can get into that in a second, but give me some observations real quick.
Was it called the All-Star Game, or was it called the Derek Jeter Love Fest? I mean, I thought the love was a little over the top. It's not like the guy's dying or something. And, there was a controversy about Adam Wainwright grooving one in there to Jeter, which I don't really have a big problem with. But if you're going to do that, don't admit to it and then try to backtrack on it. It was a good night for Jeter to, honor that career he's had of, a guy who's only hit 100 RBI once. So, I was thinking about Jeter a little bit, too. And I was listening to some Boston sports radio this morning, and they had a reporter on from the Times or the Post there in New York. I'm not sure which one. And he had Jeter on his all-time Yankees list at number 3.
What?
Behind Ruth, Mantle, and then Jeter. He had him ahead of DiMaggio.
Are you serious?
Ahead of Gehrig.
You sure this wasn't a Boston guy? Kind of giving him a dig?
No, the Boston guys were kind of sticking up for Gehrig and DiMaggio.
Oh, that's atrocious.
I mean, Jeter was a great player, yeah. And when I was thinking, where does he rank all-time baseball-wise, I would, top 100. But I was looking through the Razzball player rater at Razzball.com, and I was really surprised at how high he's ranked all-time. It's a cool little feature in our player rater where you can check some of the best seasons all time, best positions all time.
I didn't even know you could do that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and the best players all time. And I was surprised to see Derek Jeter listed at number 41 on the all-time player rater. He's a top 50 player ahead of guys like Johnny Bench, Duke Snider, Frank Thomas, Robin Yount.
So that's for fantasy, of course. So let's just clarify.
Exactly. So okay. I found that a little interesting that Jeter would be listed that high.
Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, that's enough Jeter. I got nothing more to talk about with Jeter because it's been way too much this year. But let me ask you this. Is the All-Star Game still relevant? I don't think it is. I think it's, kind of ridiculous that they play for home field in the playoffs out of that game, especially if you're telling me that Wainwright is soft tossing over to Jeter. It's not relevant anymore, is it?
Yeah, the All-Star Game's time has passed. I loved it when I was a kid. You didn't get to see National League teams play. And, now there's interleague play, there's cable packages. I can watch the Dodgers anytime that I want, even though the people in LA can't. I can.
Right.
And so, the days of the All-Star Game having any sort of importance, I think, are over. And I think the ratings really reinforce that.
Yeah, I think it all turned after Pete Rose took Fosse out and ended his career. Because, it used to be very competitive. I mean, they didn't like each other, not just Rose and Fosse, but I'm talking, National League, American League. Now it's, it's like I'm surprised they're not hugging like the NBA. Anyway, let's talk a little fantasy baseball. So I want to talk about some guys who've had some, interesting first halves and what you see them doing in the second half. We'll start with Nelson Cruz, 28 launches, 74 RBI, 287 average. It's not sustainable. So I don't even know you can sell them high because most people are going to think, hey, that's not sustainable. But what are we penciling in for second half? And technically, we're actually a little bit past the second halfway point. So what are we going to get here? 12, maybe 14 home runs out of him? Is that realistic?
Maybe even a little less. I'm looking over my 15 fantasy teams, and that's down a few from last year. And, I got a few in first. I've got a couple near the bottom where the injuries have totally destroyed those teams. I think a lot of people who play fantasy can relate to that. But most of my teams are lumped in the middle. And I think that season full of injuries and a number of underachievers this year and overachievers, have affected the players that I drafted, and that's why I'm stuck in the middle. And Nelson Cruz is one of those guys. We were talking about the Razzball player rater, and for the first half, Cruz is the number 2 player in all of fantasy, right behind Mike Trout.
And he should be.
I mean, there's no denying he's had a great first half.
No question.
He's got 28 homers, 75 RBI, hit about 290 or so. But the counting stats have been dropping a bit since he hit 13 homers and batted about 340 back in May. Since then, he's hit 8 homers and about 280, and there's just no way he's going to keep that home run fly ball rate where it is right now. It's at about 24%. Would it be crazy to flip Cruz for, say, someone like Jay Bruce? I don't think so.
Listen, if you're in a situation where you could get Bruce and a closer, or something else that's going to help your team, obviously, look, if he gets 12 homers the rest of the season, you're probably realistically, that's where your expectations speak. So I'd put him at about 40. So yeah, I mean, I'd make a deal if someone's all in on him, especially if you're dealing with an O's fan. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move along. Victor Martinez, he have 21 homers, 55 RBI, and a 320 average. Now, he's a 304 career hitter. So the average is a little bit higher than normal, but it can be expected. However, he's never hit more than 25 home runs in his career in a single season. So this is not sustainable. I don't know that you can trade him because I don't think anyone's going to look at him as able to be able to hold on to that. So you tell me, what's the story here with VMart?
Yeah, it might be a tough sell. Like you said, he's at 21 homers right now. He's never hit more than 25, and that was 7 years ago. So I'm not sure what you can get for VMart. He's only played a couple of games in July. He's dealing with a back issue that kept him out of the All-Star game. The Tigers say he'll be ready to go in the second half. He's 5th in the league in hitting. If you need average, this is a guy that you probably want. But there's no way he's going to keep up this pace of home runs. What, he's going to end up with 35 homers? That's crazy. If I could flip him for, trying to think a couple of guys off the top of my head that I think might pick it up in the second half. If I could flip a VMart for, say, a Matt Kemp or a disgruntled Jason Kipnis owner,
right?
I think that might work.
No, I'm with you on that. Listen, I want to talk about more of these guys as well as more potential trade targets for the second half. We'll do that right here after the break on Razzball Radio. Hey, and welcome back to Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. I'm hanging out with the Guru here. Guru, just so you know, we got some great guests coming up this week. On Thursday's show, we're going to talk to fantasy broadcast legend Lenny Melnick. That's right, he's going to join us. And on Friday, we've got Mike Cardano of Votto Experts in the Fantasy Sports Network. So you, my man, are right in the middle of a beefy lineup this week.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Okay, we're talking about guys, what we're going to expect from these players second half of the season. Are you buying low on Joey Votto? Here's the thing. I know it's stressful. I know people aren't crazy about him. He's only got 6 homers the whole year. He's dealing with injuries. He's been dealing with injuries the whole year. It's probably a punt here. But can you make any kind of argument of going out and trying to buy him low?
Man, the injury to Votto, that hurts. It's been a disappointing season, and this might be a lost season for Votto. If you've got a Reds fan out there in their Pete Rose PJs that's willing to deal for him, but I would do it. It's going to be a bust year for Votto, I think. What, he could hit 3-something with 10 to 12 homers the rest of the way. That's shooting really high for him. I'm not counting on it. Before the injury, he was hitting a career low 255. It's been a lost year. The Reds are saying he's going to be back in a few weeks. It might be a month. It might be longer. When you're hearing stuff like plasma platelet injections, right, that's pretty worrisome. But if I'm a Votto owner and I've got someone out there that's willing to take a chance, maybe they're down in the standings, and you could get, say, Matt Adams for him, I think that might be a deal that could work for you.
I hear you, but I don't know you could get Matt. I don't know that you could trade Matt Adams for Joey Votto.
Maybe someone has Chris Davis and they're just completely fed up with him. Maybe you could make that sort of deal work if you took them out for,
You're stretching, my man. You're stretching. You're stretching that 6'5" frame of yours.
Maybe if you took them out for a nice, Chinese food dinner and bought them 7 or 8 Mai Tais, you might be able to make a deal and unload Votto.
Speaking of Mai Tais, we might have to have one when we get to San Francisco on the tour. Actually, you know what we got to do when we go to the rec room in San Francisco? We got to have a beer and a shot of Fernet.
There you go, man.
San Francisco Institution, beer and a shot of Fernet. That's legendary. Okay, let's move along from Votto because I don't think there's much to talk about there. I think there's too much injury risk. If someone wants to give him away for 30 cents on the dollar, then I'd consider it. Dee Gordon got off to a wicked hot start. Obviously, he's come back to earth a little bit, but this guy wasn't drafted in a lot of leagues, and it was reasonable to not draft him because he just didn't have the resume to do it. What is his situation second half? Are you buying him? Are you selling him? You holding him?
Wow.
You putting him on Amazon?
We've waited all year for those regression fairies to come and visit the son of Flash, and it just hasn't happened. I mean, the guy has a legit shot to be the first player to steal 100 bases since 1987.
Wow.
I'll buy you a drink in San Fran if you can tell me who that player was.
Okay, off the top of my head, I want to say Ricky Henderson, but that's not my guess. I'm going to, you know what? Vince Coleman?
I owe you a drink, man. Nice work. Yeah. Vince Coleman. So D is on, a legendary pace here. I mean, he got off to a great start. He was hitting like 350, 340 something in March and April. That dipped down into the 240s in May, and then he picked it right back up again, hitting over 300 the rest of the way. The on-base percentage is like 344. His K rate is down. The BABIP is high, which makes sense with the kind of speed he has, and the fly ball rate is down. So Gordon has been the steal of the draft, no pun intended. Yeah. But since the end of May, he has 8 stolen bases, and he's been caught stealing 6 times. So I think if you're going to sell on D, if those regression fairies are going to come like so many of us think that they will, I think now is the time to sell high on Dee Gordon. And you could probably get something pretty tasty in return. Maybe you could get a Bryce Harper, or maybe you could get Michael Brantley.
Or a top shelf. I think you get a top shelf pitcher for him. I'd even, if you needed steals and you were ahead in innings, I mean, Kershaw is a reasonable get for what he's done. By the way,
absolutely.
You've just made me all nostalgic thinking about the 1987 Cards, because I grew up in Montreal, right? So I hated the Cardinals with Tom Herr and Willie McGee and Ozzie Smith.
Willie, yeah.
Oh, those were the good old days, my man. Okay, yeah, listen, I'm all about it. I think Dee Gordon could get you pretty much anything you wanted if someone needs steals. So I'm with you. That's a great stat about his post-May theft numbers. Okay. Let's talk about Charlie Blackmon for a second. This was a guy I got into right away. I actually caught a game at Coors the first week of the season.
Nice.
Love you, Denver. And this guy, I mean, just how he was hitting the ball, I was there on my phone. I'm like, add drop. I'm like, give me some Charlie Blackmon. So I enjoyed a great April. Since then, obviously, he's cooled off. He's hitting in the 280 since then. But you know what? He's averaging about 4 homers and 4 steals a month. Dano was on yesterday. He actually called him a Michael Brantley light, and I think that's a fair comparison.
Well, yeah, I think, if you want to compare him to Brantley the first few months, maybe, I'll admit it when it comes to Blackmon, I wasn't buying on him, and it surprised me again when I checked the player rater at Razzball.com, and Blackmon is rated the number 10 hitter for the first half of the season, top 10 in fantasy. I mean, that's ahead of Miggy, Goldie, Joey Bats, and any other guy with a cool nickname you want to throw in there. I think it's a perfect sell-high situation right now with Blackmon. He had that huge first month of the season, and while he did start to heat up a little bit before the break, the OPS has dropped steadily from March and April. The K rate has gone up, and the average is gone down. I think it's a good sell guy right now. You might be able to get someone like Jason Worth. That would be a great guy to pick up, who's I think has been underrated this fantasy season.
Yeah, Jason Worth is always underrated, yeah.
Starlin Marte is another name that comes to mind. He's been a bit of a disappointment. And if you could flip Blackmon for George Springer, who I think is in the works for a big second half, that's a guy that I'm targeting.
Man, you know what? I got to keep arguing. Everyone keeps talking about Springer. That K rate is atrocious. The only thing sustainable about that or what he's doing is the sustainable energy he's creating as a windmill. Listen, to me, George Springer is the ultimate sell high. And to be honest with you, I'd actually hold Charlie Blackmon right now because I think there's maybe 7 to 10 homers and 7 to 10 steals coming out of him rest of the season. So for me, that'd be tough to replace. All right, we're going to talk some more about this stuff.
We'll wager another drink here on who has the better second half, Charlie Blackmon or George Springer.
I don't know if I'll do that. Okay, hold on. Let's go to break. We'll come back. We'll talk more about this here. Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. Welcome back to Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. We are throwing all kinds of wagers out today between my man here, Guru, and myself. Of course, you can follow him at the Guru GS on Twitter. You just threw out better rest of season, George Springer, Charlie Blackmon. That's kind of not fair. I don't think Springer can sustain what he's doing, but there's a lot of guys I would actually take over Springer, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's an outlier, but I find those guys that always have those outlier fantasy stats, like Matt Cain. His numbers don't look okay. Let's throw this here out, but his numbers never looked like a guy who could maintain what he was doing. And you know what? It looks like maybe it finally caught up to him. Maybe there was 3 or 4 years there where there was some luck, which seems like a crazy sample size, but it's not crazy. Well, maybe it's a little crazy. All right, but listen, I'm willing to make some bets. Actually, you know what? Let me pull it. I got the road trip list here for you because we are going to some wicked places. If you're in San Francisco, of course, we're at the Rec Room. In Oaktown, we're going to 3K Broadway. San Diego in Players. I'm excited for that one. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll tell you what. A couple things I got to eat on this road trip. When we hit
it's all about the food with Mr. Capozzi.
Hey man, absolutely, buddy. I kind of consider myself a slightly less bitter Anthony Bourdain, with a fantasy backbone. The Post in St. Lou, I'm eating toasted ravioli. There's nothing stopping me from doing that. Got to eat some barbecue at the Well in Kansas City.
Oh, nice.
What do you eat in Cleveland?
Pierogies. That's a really good question.
Actually, I love Cleveland. We're going to have a big turnout, and I'm just working on the details. We should have that location set up in the next day or two in Cleveland, but that's going to be a big one. We actually may even have a surprise guest. Oh, let me throw one more out at you. Taking a kind of a risk here because I'm still waiting back on the paperwork, but looks like we're going to be going to Chicky and Pete's in Philadelphia. That's right, the South Philly location. So, listen, I get a cheesesteak. Whiz wit anywhere, but I want to eat crab fries when I get to Philadelphia at Chicky and Pete's. Okay, back to fancy baseball. I was getting excited about the tour. We're about to head off.
If you've got the stomach of Anthony Bourdain, I probably have the liver. So it's gonna be a good match.
Yeah, just like I said, I'm jacked up because we're about to hit the road, and you and I are going to do 32 straight shows. So every day there's going to be a show from us on the road. So you are going to get to watch Guru and I slowly wither away, turn into dust, and hopefully we just survive it, my man.
Yeah. I'm going to be blogging the whole trip. I'll be sending out tweets and Instagrams, and you can follow us along, and you'll be able to see some of the behind-the-scenes action of Razzball's 32 and 32 in 32.
As they say, powered by the Fantasy Sports Network. As they say in Boston, where we'll be at the greatest bar, right across from the Garden. As they say in Boston, it's going to be wicked.
Oh, it's going to be wicked.
Wicked nasty. Okay, back to some fantasy baseball. We're getting excited. Come on, give us some leeway here, people. Okay, Josh Beckett hit the DL. A little bit of a hip injury. They said he was going to come back right away. Now, Beckett's numbers says he can't sustain what he's been doing. What's your take on him for rest of season?
As a Boston Red Sox fan, Josh Beckett is dead to me. But he has resurrected himself there in Los Angeles. And yeah, the hip problem may scare some people away from making any sort of deal for him. But, check it out. The ERA is 2.26. If you're trading with somebody, make sure you bring up, hey, remember that time Josh Beckett threw a no-hitter? And, I think a lot of Beckett's success in the first half can be attributed to the batting average on balls in play, which was about 230. And he was leaving guys on base at about an 85% clip. I don't see that as being sustainable. If you could flip him to someone who needs a starter, maybe they're a Justin Verlander owner, and they want to trade you Verlander for Beckett straight up, I'd do that in a minute. Or you could flip him, try to get a closer. Maybe you could pick up a closer that could be changing teams here before the trade deadline.
Right.
I'm thinking someone like Jonathan Papelbon or a guy like Houston Street.
The only concern I have with that, and you know what, very likely that both of those guys, if traded, would fall into a closer role, but there's always a chance they might come in as setup guys, which isn't crazy because if you're on a legit contending team, you're going to establish closer, but you just want to beef up the bullpen. So it's always risky when you're talking about that.
Agreed.
Listen, I want to throw out some guys I'm targeting real quick, and I want your take on it. We talked about Jason Kipnis, so I won't rehash it again, but I think there's a chance. He's a kind of a half-year player. Usually it's the first half, not this year, so I might go out and get Kipnis if the price is right. But here's two guys that I like, and I'm thinking either I pick these guys up of waivers, because you could in most leagues, but these are guys I'd love to add as a throw-in to the deal. So if, I'm looking for a little bit of sweetener on a deal, so someone really wants Dee Gordon and they're willing to give me Kershaw, which is not crazy, I'll say, hey, throw in Brock Holt as well. Just because, I need a little middle infield help. I like Brock Holt. He's had a nice little year. You a viable trade target?
Now you're talking about, a player that we love in Boston. He's a wicked piss out, that Brock Holt. It's Brock's world right now at Fenway, and, we're just living in it. Yeah, that's definitely a guy that I'd love to have on my team, especially with all the, positional eligibility that you can get at him. He's batting leadoff. He's got a little speed. He's got a little bit of pop.
Yep.
He's hitting for average. Is he going to just run off a cliff here in the second half? We sure hope not as Red Sox fans. And I don't think he will as a fantasy player either. I think he's going to be a viable option all season long.
Nice little complete game, available in more than half of leagues. And I kind of compared him to, a mini Pedroia. I don't know that you can get minier than Pedroia, but let's say Pedroia light.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Another guy that I wouldn't mind getting as sweetener in a deal. Now, you can usually just pick him up, but if James Jones is owned, he's put together a quiet but nice little season up in Seattle. A lot of speed. Hits better than some of these thefty guys like Eric Young who have trouble getting on base. I like James Jones. Viable target? You going to get him?
Yeah. We've talked a lot about this fantasy season about maximizing at-bats. And so that means that you're going to have, 2, 3, maybe 4 guys on your bench, depending on the size of your league. And James Jones is one of those types that I like to have on my bench because he's got some speed and because he hits at the top of the order. So you're going to get some good counting stats out of him. You're going to get some runs. You're going to get some stolen bases. He hits a little bit for average. That's a guy that's a real good viable option to have on your bench.
Speaking of viable options, you're no longer a viable option today because we're out of time, Guru. Sorry, guys. That's all the time we got for today. We'll be back tomorrow with Lenny Melnick. Friday, we got Mike Cardano. It is a big week. They can't see your T-shirt.
Gah!
He's the Guru. I'm Nick Capozzi. Thanks for joining us. Razzball Radio on the Fantasy Sports Network. On the Fantasy